Welcome to Stoic Vivu, where ancient wisdom meets modern life. This channel exists to make the profound teachings of Stoic philosophy practical and accessible for anyone seeking genuine transformation in today's chaotic world. We believe that the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus holds the keys to living with unshakable inner peace, authentic confidence, and purposeful direction, regardless of what's happening around you. You're about to embark on a complete 15-step transformation journey that will fundamentally change how you approach every aspect of your life. This isn't another quick-fix self-help system or surface-level motivational content. These are time-tested principles that have guided emperors through crises, helped prisoners find freedom in captivity, and enabled ordinary people to live extraordinary lives for over 2,000 years. Here's what makes this transformation different from everything else you've tried. Instead of chasing external validation or temporary emotional highs, you'll learn to build genuine strength from within. Rather than avoiding life's challenges, you'll discover how to transform every obstacle into an opportunity for growth. Most importantly, you'll develop the kind of inner stability that no external circumstance can shake. Each step builds purposefully upon the previous one, creating a comprehensive system for personal transformation. You'll begin by mastering the fundamental principle that controls everything else in your life. From there, you'll develop daily practices that strengthen your character, learn to regulate your emotions with precision, and build authentic confidence that never depends on other people's opinions. As you progress through the middle steps, you'll discover how to turn your biggest challenges into your greatest strengths, create unshakable purpose even in uncertain times, and make excellent decisions under pressure. The final steps will teach you to live with complete awareness of what truly matters, build relationships that strengthen your character, and achieve the kind of inner freedom that transforms everything about how you experience life. What you're about to learn isn't theory. These are practical tools that you can implement immediately, starting today. You'll hear real scenarios featuring people just like you, facing the same challenges you face, in modern American cities dealing with contemporary pressures. You'll see exactly how ancient Stoic wisdom applies to workplace stress, relationship conflicts, financial uncertainty, and the countless daily decisions that shape your life. Throughout this journey, you'll encounter the actual words and teachings of the three greatest Stoic philosophers. Marcus Aurelius will show you how to maintain perspective during chaos and lead with integrity under pressure. Seneca will teach you to master your emotions, manage your time wisely, and build meaningful relationships. Epictetus will reveal how to achieve true inner freedom regardless of your external circumstances. By the end of these 15 steps, you won't just understand Stoic philosophy intellectually. You'll have integrated these principles so deeply into your daily life that responding with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline becomes as natural as breathing. You'll possess the tools to handle any challenge with grace, create authentic happiness from within, and live with the kind of purposeful direction that makes every day meaningful. Are you ready to begin your transformation? Let's start with the foundation that makes everything else possible. Step 1. How to take control of your life starting today. You're sitting in your car in downtown Chicago traffic, watching the minutes tick by as you realize you're going to be late for an important meeting. Your mind starts racing with worry about what your boss will think, how this might affect your promotion chances, and whether you should have left earlier. Your heart rate increases, your palms get sweaty, and you feel that familiar knot of anxiety forming in your stomach. You're completely powerless over the traffic, yet you're torturing yourself over something entirely beyond your control. This scenario illustrates the most fundamental principle that will transform your entire life: understanding the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. This concept, taught by the ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus over 2,000 years ago, remains the foundation of all genuine peace and personal power. Epictetus, who knew something about powerlessness having been born into slavery, taught us, "Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are our opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, position, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing." Let's break this down in practical terms that apply to your daily life. What you can control includes your thoughts, your responses to situations, your decisions, your effort, and your character. What you cannot control includes other people's actions, the weather, traffic, the economy, your past, the future, and countless external circumstances that affect your life every day. Consider another scenario. You're at work in a busy Manhattan office when your colleague takes credit for your idea during a team meeting. You feel anger rising as you watch them receive praise for your hard work. In this moment, you have a choice that will determine whether you experience peace or suffering. You cannot control what your colleague did, what your boss thinks, or how the meeting unfolds, but you absolutely control how you respond. Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal and political challenges as Roman emperor, reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Rather than letting your colleague's actions control your emotional state, you can choose to respond with dignity, plan a constructive conversation later, or simply recognize that their character is revealed through their actions while yours is revealed through your response. The profound shift happens when you stop wasting energy on things outside your control and redirect that energy toward what you can actually influence. Think about how much mental and emotional energy you spend each day worrying about things you cannot change. You worry about whether it will rain during your weekend plans. You stress about what people think of your social media posts. You lose sleep over whether the stock market will affect your retirement savings. Seneca, the Roman statesman and philosopher, observed, "It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass?" When you recognize that most of your suffering comes from imagining problems that may never occur, you begin to see how much control you actually have over your experience of life. Let's make this practical with a step-by-step approach you can implement immediately. First, throughout your day, practice identifying what category each concern falls into. When you notice yourself feeling stressed or anxious, pause and ask, "Is this something I can control or something I cannot control?" This simple question becomes a powerful filter that determines where you invest your mental energy. If something falls into the cannot control category, practice acceptance. This doesn't mean passive resignation or not caring about outcomes. It means acknowledging reality while focusing your energy where it can actually make a difference. You cannot control whether you get the promotion, but you can control the quality of your work and your professional development. If something falls into the can control category, take action. You cannot control your boss's mood, but you can control how well you prepare for meetings. You cannot control the traffic, but you can control when you leave for appointments. You cannot control other people's opinions, but you can control whether you live according to your values. Start practicing this distinction in small situations before applying it to major life challenges. When the barista gets your coffee order wrong, notice whether you waste energy being frustrated about their mistake, cannot control, or simply ask for a correction while maintaining your peace of mind, can control. When your flight gets delayed, observe whether you spend time complaining about airline policies, cannot control, or use the extra time productively while staying calm, can control. The liberation that comes from truly understanding this principle extends far beyond managing daily frustrations. You begin to realize that your happiness, your sense of purpose, and your overall well-being depend far more on your internal responses than on external circumstances. This awareness transforms you from someone who feels like a victim of circumstances into someone who recognizes their power to choose their experience regardless of what happens around them. As Epictetus taught, no one can harm you without your permission. This doesn't mean that bad things won't happen to you or that people won't treat you poorly. It means that your inner peace, your character, and your sense of self-worth remain under your control regardless of external events. With this foundational understanding of control firmly established, you're ready to build the daily practice that will reinforce these principles and create lasting transformation in your life. Step 2. The 5-minute morning habit that changes everything. You wake up in your San Francisco apartment as your alarm pierces through the quiet morning air. Your first instinct is to reach for your phone, immediately flooding your mind with notifications, news headlines, and the urgent demands of others. Before you've even gotten out of bed, your mental energy is already scattered across dozens of external concerns that will pull you in different directions throughout the day. You're starting from a reactive position, letting the outside world dictate your inner state from the very first moment of consciousness. This common morning routine represents a fundamental mistake that undermines your entire day before it even begins. Instead of allowing external forces to hijack your attention and emotional state, you have the opportunity to establish inner strength and clarity that will serve you regardless of what challenges arise. The practice we're about to explore was developed by Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, who understood that true strength begins with how you start each day. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling the vast Roman Empire and facing constant political pressures, military campaigns, and personal tragedies, maintained his inner peace through a simple morning practice. In his personal journal, which we now call the Meditations, he wrote reflections that prepared his mind for the day ahead. He understood that the first few minutes of each morning set the tone for everything that follows. Here's the transformative 5-minute practice that will fundamentally change how you experience each day. Before checking your phone, reading news, or engaging with any external demands, you'll spend these precious minutes strengthening your inner foundation through structured reflection and intention setting. Begin by sitting quietly in your bed or moving to a comfortable chair where you won't be disturbed. Take 3 deep, deliberate breaths to center yourself in the present moment. This simple breathing exercise signals to your nervous system that you're moving from a state of sleep into conscious, intentional living rather than reactive rushing. The first part of your practice involves reminding yourself of the day's potential challenges and your capacity to handle them with wisdom. Marcus Aurelius would tell himself each morning, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. Adapt this wisdom to your modern context by spending 1 minute acknowledging that you may encounter difficult people, unexpected obstacles, or frustrating situations during the day. Rather than hoping for a perfect day free from challenges, you're mentally preparing yourself to respond with virtue and wisdom when difficulties arise. You might reflect, "Today I may face criticism from my boss, deal with traffic delays, or encounter people who are stressed and unpleasant. I cannot control these external circumstances, but I can choose to respond with patience, understanding, and strength." The second part of your practice focuses on clarifying your intentions and values for the day ahead. Spend 2 minutes reflecting on the kind of person you want to be, regardless of what happens around you. Seneca advised, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Each morning offers you a fresh opportunity to embody your highest values and contribute positively to the world. Ask yourself specific questions that connect your daily activities to your deeper character development. What opportunities will you have today to practice courage, wisdom, justice, or self-discipline? How can you serve others while remaining true to your principles? What would it look like to handle today's responsibilities with complete integrity and excellence? The third component involves setting your mental framework for handling whatever the day brings. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Confine yourself to the present. Spend 1 minute committing to staying present and engaged with whatever task or person deserves your attention, rather than allowing your mind to scatter across past regrets or future anxieties." This present moment awareness becomes your anchor throughout the day. When you notice your mind wandering into worry about tonight's presentation during this morning's meeting, you'll have the foundation to bring your attention back to what actually requires your focus right now. The final minute of your practice involves expressing gratitude for the opportunity to live according to wisdom and virtue. This isn't superficial positive thinking or denying life's difficulties. Instead, you're acknowledging the profound privilege of being able to choose your responses, develop your character, and contribute meaningfully to the world around you. Epictetus, who understood suffering intimately from his experience as a slave, taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Your morning practice prepares you to embody wisdom rather than merely thinking about it throughout the day. The power of this practice lies not in any single morning session, but in the cumulative effect of starting each day with intentional strength rather than reactive chaos. After just 1 week of consistent practice, you'll notice that you handle unexpected challenges with greater calm and clarity. Your responses become more thoughtful and less emotional. You find yourself naturally focusing on what you can control rather than wasting energy on what you cannot. Consider how this morning practice would have changed the traffic scenario from our previous step. Instead of starting your day in reactive mode, you would have already acknowledged that delays and obstacles are normal parts of life. You would have committed to maintaining your inner peace regardless of external circumstances. Rather than arriving at work stressed and scattered, you'd maintain the centered strength you cultivated during your morning reflection. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity and adaptability. Whether you're traveling, working different shifts, or facing major life transitions, these 5 minutes of intentional reflection can happen anywhere and at any time. You're not dependent on perfect conditions or special equipment. You simply need the commitment to prioritize your inner development above the urgent demands that constantly compete for your attention. As you begin implementing this morning practice, you'll discover that it naturally extends beyond these 5 minutes into a more mindful, intentional approach to your entire day. The strength and clarity you cultivate each morning becomes the foundation for making excellent decisions, building meaningful relationships, and maintaining your peace regardless of external circumstances. With this daily foundation established, you're ready to understand why ancient Stoic principles provide superior guidance compared to modern approaches to personal development. Step 3. Why this ancient philosophy beats modern self-help. You're browsing through a bookstore in downtown Seattle, overwhelmed by an entire wall dedicated to self-help and personal development. The titles promise to change your life in 30 days, unlock your unlimited potential, and reveal the secret to instant happiness. Each book claims to have discovered the revolutionary new method that will finally solve your problems and transform your existence. You pick up several books, flip through pages filled with buzzwords and motivational mantras, yet something feels hollow about these promises of quick transformation. This scene captures a fundamental problem with modern self-help approaches. They focus on external strategies, temporary motivation, and quick fixes rather than addressing the deeper foundation of human character and wisdom. While these contemporary methods might provide short-term inspiration, they often leave people dependent on constant external validation and new techniques rather than developing genuine inner strength. The ancient Stoic philosophy offers something fundamentally different and far more powerful. Rather than promising easy solutions or overnight transformation, Stoicism provides time-tested principles that have guided people through the most challenging circumstances imaginable for over 2,000 years. These aren't trendy concepts that will be replaced by next year's popular approach. They're enduring truths about human nature and the path to genuine fulfillment. To understand why Stoic wisdom surpasses modern self-help, we need to examine the core differences in their approaches to personal development. Modern self-help typically focuses on changing external circumstances to create internal happiness. The underlying assumption is that if you can just get the right job, perfect relationship, ideal body, or sufficient wealth, then you'll finally be happy and fulfilled. This approach makes your well-being dependent on factors largely outside your control. Stoicism takes the opposite approach, focusing on developing internal qualities that remain stable regardless of external circumstances. As Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Rather than chasing external achievements to feel successful, you develop the wisdom to find contentment and purpose through virtue and character development. Consider how these different approaches would handle a common challenge like job loss. Modern self-help might encourage you to visualize your ideal new position, practice positive affirmations, or follow a specific networking strategy. While these tactics might be helpful, they still make your emotional well-being dependent on landing the perfect job. If the job search takes longer than expected or doesn't lead to your ideal outcome, you're left feeling discouraged and defeated. The Stoic approach would certainly encourage practical action in finding new employment, but it would focus primarily on how this challenge can strengthen your character and clarify your values. Marcus Aurelius reflected, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." From this perspective, job loss becomes an opportunity to practice resilience, reassess your priorities, and demonstrate your ability to maintain dignity and purpose regardless of your employment status. Modern self-help often promotes the idea that you should eliminate all negative emotions and maintain constant positivity. This creates an unrealistic expectation that leads to guilt and frustration when you naturally experience sadness, anger, or disappointment. You end up fighting against normal human emotions rather than learning to work with them constructively. Stoicism acknowledges that challenging emotions are natural and even valuable when properly understood and managed. Seneca wrote, "Fire is the test of gold, adversity of strong men." Rather than avoiding difficult emotions, you learn to examine them rationally, understand their messages, and respond with wisdom rather than being controlled by reactive impulses. The difference becomes clear when you face a personal setback like a relationship ending. Modern approaches might encourage you to immediately focus on finding someone new, practice self-love affirmations, or blame your ex-partner for the problems. These strategies often prevent you from processing the experience fully and learning from it. Stoic wisdom would encourage you to examine what this relationship taught you about yourself, how you can grow from the experience, and what virtues you can practice during this transition. You might develop greater self-knowledge, stronger independence, or deeper compassion for others who face similar challenges. The focus shifts from avoiding pain to using it for character development. Another crucial difference lies in their approach to control and responsibility. Modern self-help often promotes the illusion that you can control outcomes through the right mindset or techniques. This creates frustration when reality doesn't match your visualizations or when positive thinking doesn't prevent difficulties from occurring. Stoicism teaches the fundamental distinction between what you can and cannot control, which we explored in our first step. This clarity eliminates the wasted energy and disappointment that comes from trying to control outcomes. Instead, you focus entirely on your efforts, decisions, and responses while accepting that results depend on many factors beyond your influence. Consider the difference in approaching a major presentation at work. Modern self-help might teach you to visualize success, eliminate all doubt, and expect a perfect outcome. While confidence is valuable, this approach sets you up for disappointment if the presentation doesn't go exactly as planned. The Stoic approach would encourage thorough preparation, clear thinking, and excellent effort while accepting that the audience's reaction, technical difficulties, or other unforeseen circumstances remain outside your control. You measure success by whether you prepared well, spoke with integrity, and maintained your composure, regardless of the specific outcome. Perhaps most importantly, Stoicism provides a coherent philosophical framework rather than disconnected techniques. Modern self-help often offers isolated strategies without addressing the underlying worldview that shapes how you interpret and respond to life. You might learn stress management techniques while still holding beliefs that create unnecessary stress. Stoic philosophy offers a comprehensive understanding of human nature, the good life, and your place in the larger cosmic order. This framework helps you make sense of experiences and maintain perspective during both triumph and adversity. As Marcus Aurelius observed, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." The practical advantage of this philosophical foundation becomes evident when you face unexpected challenges. Rather than scrambling for the right technique or trying to remember motivational quotes, you have internalized principles that naturally guide your responses. Your character becomes your compass, providing consistent direction regardless of external circumstances. This deeper transformation prepares you to master your emotional responses with the precision and wisdom that only comes from understanding the true nature of emotions and their proper role in human flourishing. Step 4. Master any emotion in under 60 seconds. You're standing in the elevator at your office building in downtown Denver when your phone buzzes with an email from your supervisor. As you read the message criticizing your recent project and questioning your judgment, you feel heat rising in your chest, your jaw clenching, and that familiar surge of anger and defensiveness flooding through your body. Your heart starts racing, and you notice your breathing becoming shallow and rapid. In this moment, you have less than 60 seconds before the elevator reaches your floor, and you have to face your colleagues. What you do in this brief window will determine whether you walk into your workplace with composure and wisdom or with reactive emotion that could damage your relationships and reputation. This scenario illustrates the critical importance of rapid emotional regulation, a skill that the ancient Stoics understood was essential for living with wisdom and effectiveness. The ability to master your emotional responses quickly isn't about suppressing feelings or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it's about understanding the true nature of emotions and having practical tools to respond with reason rather than being controlled by reactive impulses. The foundation of Stoic emotional mastery lies in understanding what emotions actually are and where they come from. Contrary to popular belief, external events don't directly cause your emotions. Instead, your emotions arise from the judgments and interpretations you make about those events. Epictetus taught this fundamental principle when he said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things." This insight is revolutionary because it means you have far more control over your emotional experience than you might realize. Let's break down the 60-second emotional mastery technique that Stoic philosophers developed through centuries of practice and refinement. This method works because it interrupts the automatic cycle of stimulus and reaction, creating space for wisdom to guide your response instead of allowing emotion to control your behavior. The first step happens in the initial 10 seconds after you notice a strong emotional reaction beginning. Instead of immediately acting on the emotion or trying to push it away, you pause and acknowledge what's happening in your body and mind. You might think to yourself, "I notice anger arising," or "I'm feeling anxiety right now." This simple acknowledgement creates a crucial separation between you and the emotion, reminding you that you are experiencing the emotion rather than being the emotion. During the next 15 seconds, you examine the judgment or interpretation that created this emotional response. Ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this situation? In the elevator scenario, you might realize you're interpreting your supervisor's email as a personal attack on your competence and worth as an employee. You're adding meaning to the situation that may not actually be there, transforming a work critique into evidence of your inadequacy. The third phase, lasting another 15 seconds, involves challenging the automatic interpretation with rational examination. Seneca counseled, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." Instead of assuming your supervisor's intentions or making the criticism mean something about your overall value, you focus on what you can learn and how you can respond constructively. You might ask yourself, is there truth in this feedback that can help me improve? Or what would a wise person do in this situation? This questioning doesn't mean accepting unfair treatment or ignoring legitimate concerns about workplace dynamics. Rather, it means separating useful information from emotional interpretation so you can respond effectively. The fourth step, occupying the next 10 seconds, involves choosing your response based on virtue rather than emotion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. You decide how to embody wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline in this specific situation, regardless of how others are behaving. In the elevator example, you might choose to thank your supervisor for the feedback, ask clarifying questions to better understand their concerns, and suggest a meeting to discuss how you can improve your approach. This response demonstrates professionalism and growth mindset rather than defensiveness or anger. The final 10 seconds focus on implementing your chosen response with complete commitment. You adjust your posture, regulate your breathing, and step into your workplace, ready to handle the situation with dignity and effectiveness. The anger may still be present in your system, but it no longer controls your behavior or decision-making. This technique becomes more powerful with practice because you're literally rewiring your brain's response patterns. Each time you pause between stimulus and response, you strengthen your capacity for rational choice rather than emotional reaction. Neuroscience confirms what the Stoics understood intuitively. You can change your automatic responses through conscious practice and repetition. Consider another common scenario where this technique proves invaluable. You're driving through Los Angeles traffic when another driver cuts you off aggressively, nearly causing an accident. Your immediate impulse might be to honk angrily, make gestures, or chase after them to express your frustration. Using the 60-second technique, you acknowledge the anger, examine your interpretation that this person deliberately disrespected you, challenge that assumption by considering they might be dealing with an emergency or simply made an error, choose to respond with patience and caution, and then focus on driving safely rather than seeking revenge. The key to mastering this technique lies in understanding that emotions serve a valuable purpose when properly interpreted. Anger often signals that something important to you feels threatened. Anxiety frequently indicates that you care deeply about an outcome. Sadness can reflect the significance of what you've lost. Rather than viewing emotions as problems to eliminate, you learn to treat them as information that can guide wise action when filtered through reason. Seneca observed, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." This doesn't mean positive thinking or denial of difficult realities. It means developing the capacity to examine your thoughts and choose responses that align with your values and long-term well-being rather than short-term emotional impulses. As you practice this 60-second emotional mastery technique, you'll discover that your overall emotional volatility decreases naturally. You become less reactive to minor annoyances and more capable of maintaining perspective during major challenges. People around you will notice your increased emotional stability and may seek your guidance during their own difficult moments. The transformation extends beyond individual emotional incidents to reshape your entire relationship with challenging feelings. You develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever emotions arise, which paradoxically makes intense emotions less overwhelming when they do occur. With this foundation of emotional mastery established, you're ready to explore how to transform one of the most destructive emotions into a source of tremendous personal strength and wisdom. Step 5. Turn your anger into unstoppable inner strength. You're sitting across from a colleague in a Phoenix conference room who has just taken credit for your months of hard work on a major project. As they present your ideas to the management team, using your research and conclusions without any acknowledgement, you feel a familiar fire building in your chest. Your face grows hot, your fists clench under the table, and every fiber of your being wants to interrupt them publicly and expose their dishonesty. The anger feels justified, even righteous, because what they're doing is genuinely wrong. Yet you also sense that acting on this fury could destroy your professional reputation and relationships, regardless of how right you are about the injustice. This scenario perfectly illustrates why anger presents such a complex challenge for anyone seeking to live with wisdom and strength. Unlike other emotions that are clearly destructive or beneficial, anger often contains legitimate insights about injustice, boundary violations, or threats to what we value most. The problem isn't that anger itself is wrong, but rather that our typical responses to anger usually cause more harm than the original situation that triggered our fury. To transform anger into genuine strength, we must first understand what this powerful emotion actually represents and why it arises with such intensity. Anger is fundamentally an energy that emerges when we perceive that something important to us has been threatened, violated, or disrespected. In evolutionary terms, anger provided our ancestors with the motivation and physical energy needed to defend themselves, their families, and their resources from genuine threats. Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal from trusted allies and constant political attacks throughout his reign as Roman emperor, developed profound insights about anger that remain remarkably relevant for modern challenges. He wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself, that it may be just and pure." This perspective suggests that our focus should shift from what others are doing wrong to how we can respond with virtue and integrity. The transformation process begins with recognizing that anger contains valuable information that should be examined rather than immediately acted upon or suppressed. When you feel anger arising, your first step involves pausing to identify what important value or boundary the situation appears to threaten. In the conference room scenario, your anger signals that honesty, fairness, and recognition for hard work matter deeply to you. These are legitimate values worth protecting, which explains why the anger feels so justified and compelling. However, the wisdom lies in separating the valid concern from the destructive emotional response. Seneca, who understood human psychology with remarkable sophistication, taught, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." This doesn't mean endless procrastination or avoiding necessary action. Instead, it means creating enough space between the triggering event and your response to choose actions that actually address the underlying issue rather than simply expressing your emotional reaction. The second phase of transformation involves examining whether your anger is proportionate to the actual situation or whether you're amplifying it through interpretations and assumptions. Often, our anger grows beyond reasonable bounds because we add layers of meaning to events that may not actually be there. Perhaps your colleague didn't deliberately steal your work, but rather misunderstood the collaboration dynamics. Maybe they're feeling desperate about their own performance and made a poor decision without fully considering the impact on you. This examination process doesn't require you to excuse harmful behavior or convince yourself that obvious wrongs are acceptable. Rather, it helps you respond to the actual situation rather than the catastrophic story your mind might create about what this incident means about your worth, your future, or the fundamental unfairness of the world. The third step involves channeling the energy that anger provides toward constructive action that actually addresses the underlying problem. Anger, when properly understood and directed, contains tremendous motivational force that can fuel positive change, boundary setting, and principled action. The key lies in using this energy to embody your values rather than simply punishing those who violated them. In the conference room situation, This might mean scheduling a private conversation with your colleague to clarify roles and expectations for future projects. You could also document your contributions more carefully and communicate more directly with management about your work. These responses address the underlying issues of recognition and fair treatment while maintaining your professional relationships and personal integrity. Epictetus, who knew something about dealing with powerful people who could make arbitrary and harmful decisions, taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This principle becomes especially powerful when applied to anger because it transforms you from someone who is controlled by others' actions into someone who uses every situation as an opportunity to practice virtue and develop character. The transformation process also involves recognizing that anger often reveals areas where you've given others too much power over your emotional state. When someone can trigger intense fury with their actions, you've essentially handed them control over your inner peace and decision-making capacity. Reclaiming this power means developing the ability to maintain your equilibrium regardless of how others choose to behave. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent to injustice. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated throughout his reign that you can address problems firmly and decisively while maintaining inner tranquility. The strength comes from responding from a place of centered wisdom rather than reactive emotion. People actually take you more seriously when your actions arise from principle rather than anger, because they sense the deeper authority that comes from self-mastery. Consider how this transformation would change your experience of common anger-triggering situations. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of spending energy on road rage, you might use the incident to practice patience and perspective. When a family member makes a thoughtless comment, rather than escalating into an argument, you could address the issue directly while maintaining your emotional stability. The cumulative effect of consistently transforming anger into principled action creates what the Stoics called an invincible mind. You develop confidence that you can handle any provocation or injustice without compromising your character or effectiveness. This inner strength becomes apparent to others, who often find themselves naturally treating you with greater respect because they sense your unshakable foundation. Seneca observed, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Each moment of anger presents an opportunity to end old patterns of reactive behavior and begin new patterns of wise response. Over time, this practice literally rewires your neural pathways, making calm strength your default response rather than emotional volatility. The ultimate transformation occurs when you realize that no external event has the power to diminish your inner strength unless you grant it that power. This recognition shifts anger from a destructive force that controls you into a tool that serves your highest values and deepest wisdom. With this mastery over anger established, you're prepared to eliminate the more subtle but equally destructive emotions of fear and chronic worry that prevent many people from living with full courage and presence. Step 6. Eliminate fear and worry using ancient techniques. You're lying awake at 3 a.m. in your Boston apartment, your mind racing with anxious thoughts about tomorrow's job interview. Despite preparing thoroughly for weeks, you find yourself imagining every possible way the interview could go wrong. What if you stumble over your words? What if they ask questions you can't answer? What if you don't get the position and have to continue struggling financially? Each worried thought spawns 3 more, creating an endless cycle of catastrophic scenarios that feel increasingly real and threatening. Your heart pounds, your palms grow sweaty, and sleep becomes impossible as fear transforms potential future problems into present moment suffering. This scenario illustrates one of the most pervasive challenges facing modern people: the tendency to create unnecessary suffering through fear and worry about events that may never occur. Understanding how ancient Stoic philosophers approached these destructive mental patterns provides you with powerful tools that can eliminate the vast majority of anxiety and fear from your daily experience. The foundation of Stoic fear elimination lies in recognizing a fundamental truth about the nature of worry that Seneca articulated with remarkable clarity. There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. This insight reveals that most of our suffering comes not from actual problems, but from the stories we tell ourselves about potential future problems. When you examine your own patterns of worry, you'll likely discover that the vast majority of things you feared throughout your life never actually happened. The first ancient technique for eliminating fear involves distinguishing between reasonable preparation and destructive worry. Epictetus, who understood the difference between productive concern and paralyzing anxiety, taught his students to focus their mental energy only on aspects of future situations they could actually influence. In the job interview scenario, reasonable preparation includes researching the company, practicing answers to common questions, and ensuring you arrive on time with appropriate materials. These activities serve a constructive purpose because they improve your actual performance. Destructive worry, by contrast, involves repeatedly imagining negative outcomes that you cannot prevent through additional preparation. Lying awake creating disaster scenarios about the interview serves no useful purpose and actually undermines your performance by increasing stress and reducing sleep quality. The Stoic approach involves catching yourself when your mind shifts from productive preparation into unproductive worry, then deliberately redirecting your attention to present moment activities or aspects of the situation you can actually control. The second technique involves practicing what Epictetus called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This might sound like it would increase anxiety, but when properly understood and applied, it actually eliminates most fear by removing the element of surprise and helping you realize your capacity to handle difficult situations. Rather than trying to convince yourself that nothing bad will ever happen, you honestly acknowledge potential challenges while developing confidence in your ability to respond with wisdom and resilience. For the job interview example, you might spend a few minutes calmly considering what would happen if you didn't get the position. You could remind yourself that this would mean continuing your current job search, perhaps learning something valuable from the interview experience, and maintaining your commitment to finding work that aligns with your skills and values. When you honestly examine even the worst-case scenario, you often discover that it's challenging but entirely manageable, which removes much of the fear's power over you. Marcus Aurelius practiced this technique regularly, reminding himself that he could handle whatever challenges arose during his reign as emperor. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Rather than creating pessimism, this preparation helped him maintain perspective and respond with virtue regardless of what difficulties he encountered. The third ancient technique focuses on developing what the Stoics called the discipline of desire, which involves training yourself to want what happens rather than demanding that reality conform to your preferences. This doesn't mean becoming passive or not working toward goals, but rather accepting that outcomes depend on many factors beyond your control. Seneca explained this principle when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." In practical terms, This means approaching your job interview with complete effort and preparation while simultaneously accepting that the final decision depends on factors you cannot control, such as other candidates, company needs, and interviewer preferences. You can want the job while not needing it for your sense of worth or well-being. This mental stance allows you to perform at your best because you're not carrying the additional burden of desperate attachment to a specific outcome. The fourth technique involves challenging the catastrophic interpretations that fuel most fears and worries. Fear often grows from small concerns into overwhelming anxiety because we add layers of meaning and consequence that may not actually exist. The Stoics practiced rational examination of their fears, asking whether their worried thoughts reflected reality or imagination. Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things." When you notice fear arising, pause and examine the specific thoughts creating that fear. Are you treating possibilities as certainties? Are you assuming the worst possible interpretation of ambiguous situations? Are you imagining that a single negative event would have catastrophic consequences for your entire life? Often, when you examine fearful thoughts rationally, you discover they're based on assumptions rather than facts. The fifth ancient technique involves accepting uncertainty as a fundamental aspect of life rather than fighting against it. Much of our fear and worry comes from the illusion that we should be able to predict and control future outcomes. The Stoics understood that uncertainty is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be accepted. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Confine yourself to the present." This acceptance doesn't mean giving up on planning or goals, but rather holding your plans lightly while remaining fully engaged with present moment opportunities and responsibilities. When you stop demanding certainty about the future, you free tremendous mental energy that was previously consumed by anxiety and worry. The transformation that results from applying these ancient techniques extends far beyond eliminating specific fears. You develop a fundamental confidence in your ability to handle whatever life presents, which paradoxically makes challenging situations less likely to occur and easier to navigate when they do arise. People sense your inner stability and often respond to you with greater respect and trust. Seneca observed, "It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass?" This wisdom reminds you that most of what you worry about never materializes, while the challenges that do arise often bring unexpected opportunities for growth and learning. With these tools for eliminating fear and worry now established in your mental toolkit, you're ready to build the kind of authentic confidence that remains unshakable regardless of external circumstances or other people's opinions. Step 7. Build confidence that never depends on others. You're walking into a networking event in downtown Miami, surrounded by successful professionals who seem to effortlessly command attention and respect. As you scan the room, you notice how confidently others introduce themselves, share their accomplishments, and engage in animated conversations. Your own sense of confidence begins to waver as you compare yourself to their apparent success and social ease. You find yourself questioning whether you belong in this room, whether your achievements measure up, and whether people will find you interesting or valuable enough to connect with. The confidence you felt when you left your apartment has completely evaporated, replaced by self-doubt that depends entirely on how you imagine others are judging you. This scenario reveals the fundamental flaw in how most people understand and attempt to build confidence. When your sense of self-worth depends on external validation, comparison with others, or favorable circumstances, you create a foundation that constantly shifts beneath your feet. True confidence, the kind that the ancient Stoics cultivated and that will serve you regardless of external conditions, comes from an entirely different source that no person or circumstance can take away from you. The Stoic understanding of genuine confidence begins with recognizing the difference between confidence that depends on externals and confidence that comes from character development. Most people build their sense of self-worth on achievements, possessions, social status, or other people's approval. While these external factors might provide temporary boosts to your ego, they also create constant anxiety because they can be lost, diminished, or withheld at any time. Epictetus, who understood the vulnerability that comes from depending on externals, taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." True confidence emerges from developing qualities that remain under your complete control regardless of external circumstances. These include your commitment to virtue, your dedication to personal growth, your integrity in relationships, and your ability to respond to challenges with wisdom and courage. When your confidence comes from these internal sources, no external event can fundamentally shake your sense of self-worth. The first principle of unshakable confidence involves basing your self-evaluation on effort rather than outcomes. In the networking event scenario, instead of measuring your worth by how impressed people seem with your job title or accomplishments, you would focus on whether you're being genuine, showing interest in others, and representing your values authentically. Seneca understood this principle when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Your confidence grows from knowing that you're consistently doing your best with integrity, regardless of specific results. This shift requires understanding the crucial distinction between self-respect and pride. Pride depends on being superior to others or achieving specific external outcomes, which makes it inherently fragile and competitive. Self-respect comes from living according to your values and developing your character, which no external circumstance can diminish. Marcus Aurelius, despite holding ultimate power in the Roman Empire, grounded his confidence in character rather than position, writing, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." The second principle involves developing competence in areas that matter to your core purpose and values. Confidence naturally grows when you know you've developed genuine skills and knowledge through dedicated practice and study. However, the Stoic approach to competence differs from conventional achievement-focused thinking. Rather than seeking competence to impress others or gain status, you develop abilities because they serve your purpose and allow you to contribute meaningfully to the world around you. In practical terms, this means focusing your energy on becoming excellent at things that align with your deepest values rather than pursuing achievements that might look impressive but don't reflect your authentic interests and strengths. When someone at the networking event asks about your work, your confidence comes from knowing that you've approached your responsibilities with dedication and integrity, not from whether your job sounds prestigious to them. The third principle centers on accepting yourself completely while simultaneously committing to continuous growth. This balanced approach prevents both complacency and the self-criticism that undermines confidence. Epictetus taught his students to recognize their current limitations without making those limitations mean anything negative about their fundamental worth as human beings. You can acknowledge areas where you need to improve while maintaining deep respect for your inherent dignity and potential. This acceptance includes embracing what makes you different rather than trying to conform to others' expectations or standards. In the networking scenario, rather than trying to project an image that you think will impress people, you would focus on authentic connection based on your genuine interests and values. This authenticity naturally attracts people who appreciate you for who you actually are, creating more meaningful relationships than those built on false impressions. The fourth principle involves developing an internal scorecard rather than an external one. Warren Buffett, influenced by Stoic principles, distinguished between people who keep score based on what others think versus those who measure themselves against their own standards. When you maintain an internal scorecard, your confidence comes from knowing that you're living according to your values and making progress toward your authentic goals, regardless of how others evaluate your choices. This internal measurement system requires clarity about what you actually value versus what you think you should value based on social conditioning. The Stoics spent considerable time examining their own beliefs and motivations to ensure they were living according to reason and virtue rather than unconscious programming from family, culture, or peer groups. The fifth principle emphasizes viewing challenges and setbacks as opportunities to demonstrate and develop character rather than threats to your self-worth. When you encounter criticism, rejection, or failure, your confidence actually grows because you get to practice responding with wisdom, learning from feedback, and maintaining your equilibrium under pressure. Marcus Aurelius approached difficulties with this mindset, seeing them as training for virtue rather than obstacles to success. At the networking event, this perspective would transform any awkward conversations or rejections from confidence-destroying experiences into valuable practice for social skills and emotional regulation. You would leave the event feeling good about how you handled yourself, regardless of specific outcomes like business cards collected or connections made. The transformation that results from building confidence on this foundation extends far beyond social situations. You develop the kind of inner stability that allows you to take appropriate risks, speak up for your values, and pursue meaningful goals without being paralyzed by fear of judgment or failure. People naturally gravitate toward individuals who possess this kind of centered confidence because it creates a sense of safety and authenticity in relationships. Seneca observed, "It is a shameful thing to be weary of inquiry when what we search for is excellent." The excellent thing you're building through these practices is an unshakable sense of self-worth that serves as the foundation for everything else in your life. With this authentic confidence established as your foundation, you're ready to explore the crucial distinction between healthy self-regard and destructive selfishness, learning how to care for yourself in ways that actually enhance your ability to serve others. Step 8. The art of loving yourself without being selfish. You're sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, when your best friend calls asking you to help them move this weekend. Your immediate impulse is to say yes, even though you've been working 60-hour weeks for the past month and desperately need rest to maintain your health and sanity. As you hesitate, that familiar voice in your head starts criticizing you for even considering saying no. Good people help their friends, it whispers. If you don't help, you're being selfish and self-centered. You feel torn between your genuine desire to support your friend and your legitimate need for rest and recovery. This internal conflict reflects one of the most misunderstood aspects of personal development, the crucial distinction between healthy self-care and destructive selfishness. This scenario illustrates a fundamental confusion that prevents many people from developing the kind of self-regard that actually enhances their ability to serve others authentically and sustainably. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood that proper self-love forms the foundation of all virtue and meaningful contribution to society. Without it, your attempts to help others often come from insecurity, people-pleasing, or emotional neediness rather than genuine strength and wisdom. To understand the art of loving yourself without being selfish, we must first examine what these terms actually mean and why they're often confused in contemporary culture. Selfishness, properly understood, involves pursuing your own interests at the expense of others or without regard for their legitimate needs and rights. It reflects a scarcity mindset that sees life as a zero-sum game where your gain necessarily means someone else's loss. Selfish behavior typically stems from insecurity, fear, or an underdeveloped sense of connection to the broader human community. Healthy self-love, by contrast, involves treating yourself with the same kindness, respect, and care that you would offer to someone you deeply value. It means recognizing your inherent worth as a human being while simultaneously taking responsibility for your own well-being, growth, and character development. Marcus Aurelius, who dedicated his life to serving the Roman Empire, understood that self-respect formed the foundation of effective leadership and service. He wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." The confusion between these concepts often arises because our culture tends to promote either complete self-sacrifice or complete self-absorption, missing the balanced middle path that the Stoics advocated. When you consistently neglect your own needs to help others, you eventually become depleted, resentful, and less capable of providing genuine assistance. When you focus exclusively on your own desires without considering others, you become isolated and miss the fulfillment that comes from meaningful connection and contribution. The Stoic approach to self-love begins with understanding your fundamental responsibilities to yourself as a rational being capable of virtue and wisdom. Epictetus taught that each person has an obligation to develop their character, cultivate their reason, and live according to nature. This isn't narcissistic self-improvement, but rather the recognition that you cannot give what you don't possess. If you haven't developed wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline in your own life, you have little of value to offer others when they face challenges requiring these qualities. In the coffee shop scenario, loving yourself properly would involve honestly assessing your current state and needs. If you're genuinely exhausted and pushing toward burnout, saying no to your friend's request becomes an act of wisdom rather than selfishness. You're recognizing that helping them while you're depleted would likely result in poor quality assistance and increased stress for both of you. Instead, you might offer to help them the following weekend when you're rested, or suggest alternative solutions that don't require your physical presence during your recovery time. This approach requires developing what Seneca called rational self-interest, which involves making decisions based on long-term well-being rather than short-term emotional impulses or social pressure. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes, loving yourself means ending patterns of overcommitment so you can begin a more sustainable way of relating to others that serves everyone better in the long run. The practice of healthy self-love also involves setting and maintaining appropriate boundaries, which many people struggle with because they confuse boundaries with selfishness. Boundaries are actually a form of clarity and respect that benefits all parties in a relationship. When you clearly communicate your limits, availability, and needs, you prevent the resentment and confusion that arise from unclear expectations. Your friend would rather know honestly that you need rest than receive grudging help accompanied by subtle signs of your exhaustion and irritation. Furthermore, the Stoic understanding of self-love includes taking responsibility for your own emotional state and well-being rather than expecting others to manage these for you. This might seem selfish on the surface, but it actually represents a generous gift to the people in your life. When you take care of your own emotional needs, maintain your own sense of purpose, and cultivate your own inner peace, you interact with others from a place of strength rather than neediness. Your relationships become based on choice and joy rather than obligation and codependency. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this principle throughout his reign by maintaining his philosophical practices and personal reflection even during the most demanding periods of leadership. He understood that his ability to serve the empire effectively depended on his commitment to his own character development and mental clarity. His personal writings reveal someone who took his own growth seriously, not as an escape from responsibility, but as preparation for greater service. The art of loving yourself without being selfish also involves recognizing the interconnectedness of individual and collective well-being. The Stoics understood that human beings are naturally social creatures whose individual flourishing depends on the health of their communities. When you develop yourself wisely, you become more capable of contributing to the common good. When you maintain your health, you don't burden others with preventable problems. When you cultivate your skills and knowledge, you have more to offer in collaborative efforts. This perspective transforms self-care from an indulgence into a responsibility. Taking time for rest, learning, reflection, and personal growth becomes a way of preparing yourself to be maximally useful to the people and causes you care about. In the moving scenario, getting adequate rest enables you to be fully present and helpful when you do assist your friend, rather than going through the motions while secretly resenting the interruption to your recovery. The transformation that results from mastering this balance extends throughout all your relationships and endeavors. You develop the ability to give genuinely and receive gracefully, to say yes from enthusiasm rather than obligation, and to say no with love rather than guilt. People begin to trust your commitments more because they know you're not overextending yourself or agreeing to things you don't actually want to do. Epictetus observed, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The wealth that comes from proper self-love includes the inner resources of peace, strength, and clarity that enable you to engage with life's challenges and opportunities from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. This foundation of healthy self-regard now prepares you to explore how character development creates the kind of authentic personal power that serves both your individual growth and your positive impact on the world around you. Step 9. Develop character that makes you truly powerful. You're standing in the lobby of a Houston office building, waiting for an elevator, when you overhear two executives discussing a business deal that you know involves misleading potential clients about the risks involved. One executive mentions your name as someone who might be willing to help present the proposal because of your reputation for persuasive presentations. As the elevator arrives and they invite you to join their conversation, you face a moment that will reveal the true nature of your character. You could easily go along with their plan, potentially advancing your career and earning significant financial rewards. Alternatively, you could find a way to decline or even challenge their approach, knowing it might damage your standing with these powerful colleagues but would preserve your integrity. This scenario perfectly illustrates what the ancient Stoic philosophers understood about the nature of true power. Most people believe that power comes from external sources like wealth, position, connections, or the ability to influence others' behavior. However, the Stoics discovered that genuine power emerges from character development and the unwavering commitment to virtue regardless of external circumstances. This kind of power cannot be taken away by others, diminished by changing conditions, or corrupted by success and failure. To understand how character creates authentic power, we must first examine what the Stoics meant by character and why they considered it the highest human achievement. Character, in the Stoic sense, represents the consistent embodiment of virtue in all circumstances. It means developing the wisdom to see situations clearly, the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult, the justice to treat all people fairly regardless of their status, and the self-discipline to align your actions with your principles rather than your immediate desires or emotions. Marcus Aurelius, who possessed ultimate earthly power as Roman emperor, understood that his character represented his true strength. He wrote in his personal reflections, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This insight reveals that character-based power comes from maintaining your principles regardless of how others behave, rather than adapting your behavior to gain temporary advantages or protect yourself from criticism. The first foundation of character-based power involves developing unwavering integrity, which means ensuring that your private thoughts, public words, and actual actions remain aligned with your deepest values. In the elevator scenario, a person with strong character would recognize that participating in misleading presentations violates their commitment to honesty, regardless of the potential career benefits. This alignment between values and actions creates a form of inner strength that others instinctively recognize and respect, even when they disagree with your specific choices. This integrity requires the courage to examine your own motivations honestly and acknowledge when you're tempted to compromise your principles for convenience or advantage. Epictetus, who understood the relationship between self-knowledge and freedom, taught, "Know, first, who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." True character development begins with honest self-assessment that reveals both your strengths and the areas where you tend to rationalize poor choices when under pressure. The second foundation involves developing emotional independence, which means maintaining your inner peace and clarity regardless of external praise or criticism. Character-based power comes from knowing that your worth doesn't depend on others' approval or disapproval, but rather on your commitment to living according to virtue. When you're not constantly seeking validation or avoiding criticism, you can make decisions based on what's genuinely right rather than what's politically expedient or socially acceptable. In practical terms, this emotional independence would allow you to decline the executive's proposal without feeling anxious about their reaction or desperate to maintain their good opinion. You would recognize that their respect for you should be based on your competence and integrity, not your willingness to participate in questionable activities. Seneca understood this principle when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes character development requires ending relationships or opportunities that demand compromising your principles. The third foundation centers on developing practical wisdom, which involves the ability to see situations clearly without being clouded by self-interest, emotion, or social pressure. This wisdom enables you to identify the right course of action even in complex circumstances where multiple values might seem to conflict. The Stoics understood that wisdom grows through experience, reflection, and the willingness to learn from both successes and mistakes. In the business scenario, practical wisdom would help you recognize that short-term career advancement through dishonest means ultimately undermines your long-term success and satisfaction. You would see that building a reputation based on integrity creates more sustainable opportunities than gaining positions through questionable methods. This long-term perspective represents one of the key differences between character-based decisions and those driven by immediate self-interest. The fourth foundation involves cultivating courage, not just physical bravery, but the moral courage to stand for your principles when it's inconvenient, unpopular, or costly. This courage emerges naturally when you understand that compromising your character damages something more valuable than any external reward you might gain. Marcus Aurelius faced countless situations where maintaining his principles conflicted with political expediency, yet he consistently chose character over convenience because he understood the true source of his power and effectiveness. The development of moral courage often begins with small decisions that seem relatively insignificant but actually establish patterns that shape how you respond to larger challenges. Each time you choose honesty over convenience, fairness over favoritism, or principle over profit, you strengthen your capacity to maintain integrity when the stakes become higher. The fifth foundation focuses on self-discipline, which means consistently choosing long-term well-being over short-term gratification and aligning your daily actions with your stated values. This discipline extends beyond obvious areas like diet and exercise to include how you manage your time, attention, and relationships. Self-discipline creates power because it ensures that your energy and resources serve your authentic goals rather than being scattered across impulses and distractions. The transformation that results from developing character-based power extends far beyond personal satisfaction or moral superiority. People naturally gravitate toward individuals who demonstrate consistent integrity because they provide stability and trustworthiness in an uncertain world. This attraction isn't based on manipulation or image management, but on the genuine strength that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. Furthermore, character-based power compounds over time as you build a reputation for reliability, wisdom, and principle. The executives in the elevator scenario might initially prefer someone willing to compromise ethics for results, but over the long term, they would likely trust important decisions to someone whose judgment they can rely on completely. Epictetus observed, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The wealth that character provides includes the respect, trust, and opportunities that naturally flow to people who consistently embody virtue. The ultimate realization that comes from developing character-based power is that you become truly free from external circumstances and other people's opinions. You can navigate success without becoming arrogant, handle failure without becoming bitter, and face criticism without becoming defensive because your sense of worth and direction comes from sources that remain under your complete control. With this foundation of character-based power firmly established, you're ready to explore how to transform life's inevitable challenges into opportunities for growth and strength, turning every obstacle into a stepping stone toward greater wisdom and resilience. Step 10. Transform every challenge into personal growth. You're sitting in your car outside a medical office in Atlanta, having just received news that will fundamentally change your life trajectory. The diagnosis wasn't what you expected, and the treatment plan will require months of difficult decisions, lifestyle changes, and uncertainty about the future. As you process this information, you feel the familiar pull toward despair, anger, and the question that seems to accompany every major life challenge. Why is this happening to me? This moment represents a crucial crossroads where you can either become a victim of circumstances or discover one of the most transformative principles in all of Stoic philosophy: the ability to turn every obstacle into an opportunity for growth and character development. The foundation of this transformation lies in understanding what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This isn't mere positive thinking or denial of genuine difficulty. Instead, it represents a fundamental shift in how you interpret and respond to challenges that will revolutionize your entire approach to adversity. Rather than viewing obstacles as interruptions to your plans or evidence that life is unfair, you begin to see them as precisely the experiences needed to develop qualities you couldn't cultivate any other way. To grasp why this perspective creates such profound transformation, consider how strength develops in any context. Physical muscles grow stronger only when challenged by resistance that pushes them beyond their current capacity. Similarly, character traits like courage, patience, wisdom, and resilience can only be developed through encounters with situations that require these qualities. The medical diagnosis, devastating as it might feel initially, presents you with an unparalleled opportunity to develop inner strength, clarify your priorities, and discover resources within yourself that might otherwise remain dormant. The first step in transforming challenges into growth involves shifting from asking, "Why me?" to asking, "How can this experience serve my development?" This question immediately moves you from a passive victim stance into an active learning position. In the medical scenario, instead of focusing on the unfairness of your situation, you might explore how this challenge could deepen your compassion for others facing health struggles, strengthen your relationships through increased vulnerability and authenticity, or clarify what truly matters most in your limited time on Earth. Epictetus, who understood adversity intimately from his experience as a slave, taught his students that every difficult situation contains hidden gifts if approached with the right mindset. He observed, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The medical diagnosis itself is simply a fact, cells behaving in certain ways that require medical intervention. Your suffering comes not from this biological reality, but from your interpretation of what it means about your future, your worth, or your plans. The second step involves identifying the specific qualities this challenge gives you an opportunity to develop. Every obstacle requires certain virtues to navigate successfully, and these virtues become stronger through practice under real-world conditions. Your health challenge might demand courage as you face uncertain outcomes, wisdom as you research treatment options and make complex decisions, justice as you advocate for your needs while considering your family's well-being, and self-discipline as you make lifestyle changes required for optimal healing. This identification process transforms your focus from what you're losing to what you're gaining. Rather than dwelling on canceled plans or changed expectations, you recognize that you're being offered an intensive course in some of life's most valuable skills. Seneca understood this principle when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." The end of your previous health status creates space for the beginning of deeper strength, wisdom, and appreciation for life's precious moments. The third step requires reframing your relationship with discomfort and uncertainty. Most people expend enormous energy trying to avoid or eliminate challenging feelings, but the Stoic approach involves learning to be comfortable with discomfort. This doesn't mean enjoying pain or pretending that difficulties aren't real. Instead, it means developing the capacity to experience challenging emotions and circumstances without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. In your medical situation, this might involve accepting the anxiety that comes with uncertainty about treatment outcomes while still taking appropriate action to support your healing. You learn to hold space for fear about the future while remaining present to today's opportunities for joy, connection, and meaningful activity. This emotional flexibility becomes a tremendous source of power that extends far beyond your current health challenge. The fourth step involves finding ways to use your challenge to serve others. One of the most powerful methods for transforming personal adversity into growth involves discovering how your experience can contribute to the well-being of other people facing similar struggles. This service orientation prevents you from becoming absorbed in self-pity while creating meaning from even the most difficult circumstances. Your health journey might lead you to mentor others facing similar diagnoses, volunteer with organizations supporting patients and families, or simply model for your loved ones how to face uncertainty with grace and courage. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this principle throughout his reign, using every political challenge and personal loss as an opportunity to embody the kind of leadership and character he wanted to see in the world. The fifth step focuses on developing gratitude for the growth that emerges from your challenges. This practice requires distinguishing between being grateful for the painful experience itself and being grateful for the qualities it helps you develop. You don't need to feel thankful for your diagnosis, but you can appreciate the increased empathy, strengthened relationships, clarified priorities, and deeper wisdom that emerge from navigating this challenge with virtue and courage. This gratitude practice prevents the bitterness and resentment that often accompany prolonged difficulties, while keeping you focused on the positive transformation occurring within your character. You begin to recognize that the person you're becoming through facing this challenge possesses qualities that the unchallenged version of yourself might never have developed. The transformation that results from consistently applying this obstacle-less path philosophy extends far beyond individual challenges to reshape your entire relationship with adversity. You develop what the Stoics called an invincible mind, not because nothing can harm you, but because you've learned to find opportunity for growth in every circumstance. Challenges become welcomed as training rather than feared as threats. Furthermore, this perspective creates a profound sense of confidence and resilience because you know that whatever life presents, you possess the tools to transform it into personal development. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to be protected from difficulty and start recognizing yourself as someone capable of growing stronger through engaging with whatever challenges arise. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." When you consistently transform obstacles into opportunities for character development, you inspire others not through your words, but through your example of how to face adversity with wisdom, courage, and grace. This mastery of challenge transformation now prepares you to create unshakable purpose and meaning that remains stable regardless of external circumstances or societal chaos, providing direction and motivation that no external force can diminish. Step 11. Create unshakable purpose in a chaotic world. You're watching the evening news in your Denver living room as reports flood in about economic uncertainty, political turmoil, climate change, and social unrest from around the globe. The constant stream of crises and conflicting information leaves you feeling overwhelmed and questioning whether your daily efforts and personal goals actually matter in the face of such massive, seemingly insurmountable challenges. You find yourself wondering what point there is in pursuing your career aspirations, building relationships, or working toward personal growth when the world around you appears to be spiraling into chaos. This sense of meaninglessness in the face of external turbulence represents one of the most common struggles of modern life, yet it also presents an opportunity to discover the kind of purpose that no external circumstance can shake or diminish. The ancient Stoic philosophers faced their own versions of global chaos, From plagues that decimated populations to political upheavals that toppled empires. Yet they developed an understanding of purpose that remained stable regardless of external conditions. This wasn't achieved by ignoring the reality of suffering and uncertainty, but rather by grounding their sense of meaning in sources that transcend temporary circumstances while still engaging meaningfully with the challenges of their time. To understand how to create unshakable purpose, we must first examine the difference between purpose that depends on external validation or specific outcomes and purpose that emerges from your fundamental nature as a rational, virtuous being capable of contributing to the common good. Most people derive their sense of meaning from achievements, recognition, or progress towards specific goals, which makes their purpose vulnerable to setbacks, failures, or changes in circumstances beyond their control. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled during a period of plague, war, and political instability that would test anyone's sense of purpose, found his meaning not in the success of his policies or the stability of his empire, but in his commitment to virtue and service regardless of outcomes. He wrote, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being. What do I have to complain of if I am going to do the things for which I exist and for which I was brought into the world?" This perspective reveals the first principle of unshakable purpose. Understanding that your fundamental reason for existence involves developing and expressing virtue in whatever circumstances you encounter. Your purpose isn't contingent on solving global problems or achieving specific external results, but rather on consistently embodying wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline in your responses to whatever situations arise. In the context of watching distressing news, this principle transforms your relationship with information and current events. Instead of feeling paralyzed by the magnitude of global challenges, you recognize that becoming the most virtuous, wise, and capable person you can be represents your primary contribution to addressing these larger issues. The second principle involves finding purpose through contribution to the common good, which the Stoics understood as the interconnected web of human relationships and shared welfare that extends beyond individual interests. This doesn't require grand gestures or world-changing achievements, but rather consistent attention to how your daily actions and decisions serve or harm the broader human community. Epictetus taught his students to view themselves as actors in a play, responsible for performing their assigned role with excellence, regardless of whether they were cast as a king or a peasant. He observed, "Remember that you are an actor in a play, which is as the author wants it to be. Your role might involve being an excellent parent, a dedicated teacher, a compassionate healthcare worker, or a skilled craftsperson. The specific role matters less than your commitment to performing it with virtue and dedication to serving others." This understanding of purpose through service creates stability because it shifts your focus from outcomes you cannot control to effort and intention that remain entirely within your power. Whether global conflicts resolve peacefully or continue indefinitely, whether economic systems remain stable or undergo dramatic changes, your ability to contribute positively to the lives of people around you remains constant and meaningful. The third principle centers on developing what Seneca called preferred indifference, a clear understanding of what you value while maintaining emotional independence from specific outcomes. This involves identifying what kind of world you want to help create and what values you want to embody, while accepting that the ultimate results depend on factors far beyond your individual influence. You might deeply value environmental sustainability, social justice, or educational opportunity while recognizing that your contribution to these causes comes through your daily choices, relationships, and the example you set rather than your ability to single-handedly solve these complex challenges. Seneca understood this balance when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Your purpose involves planting seeds through virtuous action while trusting that the harvest depends on conditions you cannot control. The fourth principle involves embracing what the Stoics called cosmic perspective, the recognition that you are part of something infinitely larger than your individual existence, yet your particular contribution remains essential to the functioning of the whole. This perspective prevents both insignificance and grandiosity by helping you understand your place in the larger order of existence. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of this cosmic perspective, writing, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." This awareness that you are interconnected with all existence provides profound meaning that transcends temporary circumstances while keeping your individual struggles and achievements in proper proportion. When you watch troubling news through this lens, you see yourself as part of humanity's ongoing story rather than a helpless observer of events beyond your influence. The fifth principle focuses on finding purpose through the continuous development of your rational and moral faculties. The Stoics believed that human beings possess a unique capacity for reason and virtue that carries inherent meaning independent of external circumstances. Your purpose involves actualizing this potential through lifelong learning, character development, and the cultivation of wisdom. This internal focus on growth and development provides unshakable purpose because it depends entirely on your commitment and effort rather than external validation or specific achievements. Whether you live during peaceful prosperity or chaotic upheaval, whether you achieve conventional success or face repeated setbacks, your opportunity to develop wisdom, strengthen character, and deepen understanding remains constant and infinitely meaningful. The transformation that emerges from grounding your purpose in these principles extends far beyond personal peace of mind to create a foundation for sustained engagement with life's challenges. You develop the kind of resilient motivation that enables you to persist through difficulties without being discouraged by temporary failures or overwhelmed by the magnitude of problems you cannot solve individually. Furthermore, this unshakable sense of purpose naturally attracts others who are seeking stability and direction in uncertain times. Your example of maintaining meaning and motivation regardless of external chaos provides inspiration and guidance that contributes to the common good in ways you may never fully recognize. Epictetus observed, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." When your purpose comes from virtue and service, rather than external validation, you become a living demonstration of how to find meaning and direction even in the most challenging circumstances. This foundation of unshakable purpose now prepares you to develop the decision-making skills that will enable you to navigate complex choices with clarity and confidence, even when facing intense pressure and competing demands. Step 12. Make perfect decisions even under extreme pressure. You're standing in the boardroom of a tech company in San Francisco, facing the most challenging decision of your professional career. The company's largest client has demanded changes that would compromise user privacy and security, threatening to cancel their multi-million-dollar contract if you refuse. Your team is counting on you for direction. Your boss is pressuring you to accept the client's demands, and you have less than an hour to make a choice that could affect hundreds of jobs, including your own. Your heart pounds as competing voices in your head argue for different courses of action, each seeming both logical and catastrophic depending on your perspective. In this moment of intense pressure, You need a decision-making framework that cuts through the chaos and guides you toward choices you can live with regardless of the consequences. This scenario illustrates why most people struggle with high-stakes decisions. Under pressure, our minds become flooded with emotions, competing priorities, and worst-case scenarios that cloud our judgment and prevent clear thinking. The ancient Stoic philosophers, however, developed a systematic approach to decision-making that actually improves under pressure because it relies on principles that remain stable regardless of external circumstances or emotional intensity. The foundation of Stoic decision-making rests on understanding what Marcus Aurelius called the discipline of action, which involves making choices based on virtue and reason rather than fear, desire, or social pressure. This doesn't mean ignoring practical considerations or emotional information, but rather ensuring that your final decision aligns with your deepest values and serves the common good, even when doing so requires courage or sacrifice. To master this approach, you must first learn to create mental clarity in the midst of chaos. When facing the client crisis, your immediate step involves separating the actual facts of the situation from the stories and interpretations your mind adds to those facts. The facts might include specific demands from the client, potential financial consequences, and your company's stated values regarding user privacy. The stories include catastrophic predictions about what might happen, assumptions about other people's motivations, and judgments about what this situation means about your competence or future prospects. Epictetus taught his students this fundamental distinction when he said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things." By identifying which elements of your stress come from facts versus interpretations, you immediately reduce the emotional intensity and create space for rational analysis. In the boardroom scenario, you might realize that much of your anxiety comes from imagining worst-case outcomes rather than addressing the actual choice in front of you. The second step involves applying what Seneca called the view from above, which means considering your decision from the perspective of your highest values and long-term character development rather than immediate convenience or short-term outcomes. This perspective asks not, what will get me the best results right now, but rather, what would the person I most want to become do in this situation? And how will I feel about this choice when I'm reflecting on my life years from now? In the client situation, this might involve asking whether accepting compromises to user privacy aligns with your commitment to integrity and service, regardless of the financial consequences. Seneca understood this principle when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes the right decision requires ending comfortable arrangements to begin living according to higher principles. The third step focuses on examining the true scope of your control and responsibility in the situation. The Stoic dichotomy of control applies powerfully to decision-making because it helps you focus your mental energy on aspects of the situation you can actually influence while accepting that many consequences depend on factors beyond your control. You cannot control whether the client accepts your decision, how your boss responds, or what the ultimate financial impact will be on the company. You can control your commitment to making the choice that best reflects your values, your effort to communicate your decision clearly and respectfully, and your response to whatever consequences follow. This clarity about control prevents you from making decisions based on attempts to manipulate outcomes you cannot actually guarantee. The fourth step involves consulting what the Stoics called the inner citadel, your core identity as a rational being capable of virtue, regardless of external circumstances. This inner consultation asks what decision would demonstrate wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline, the four cardinal virtues that the Stoics considered essential to human flourishing. Wisdom involves seeing the situation clearly and understanding the broader implications of your choice. Courage means doing what's right even when it's difficult or costly. Justice requires considering the impact of your decision on all stakeholders, not just your immediate interests. Self-discipline involves choosing long-term integrity over short-term advantage. When your decision aligns with all four virtues, you can proceed with confidence regardless of external pressure or uncertainty about outcomes. The fifth step centers on accepting responsibility for your choice while releasing attachment to specific results. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this principle throughout his reign by making decisions based on virtue and duty, while accepting that he could not control whether his policies succeeded or whether people appreciated his efforts. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. This means focusing completely on making the best possible decision with the information available right now, rather than trying to predict or control future developments." In practical terms, this might mean choosing to decline the client's demands because doing so aligns with your values, while simultaneously accepting that this choice might result in financial losses, job changes, or criticism from colleagues. The power of this approach lies in ensuring that your sense of self-worth and inner peace don't depend on others' approval of your decision or specific external outcomes. The transformation that results from applying this decision-making framework extends far beyond individual choices to reshape your entire relationship with uncertainty and pressure. You develop what the Stoics called equanimity, the ability to remain centered and clear-headed regardless of external circumstances. This inner stability actually improves your decision-making capacity because you're not distracted by anxiety about consequences or desperate attempts to control outcomes beyond your influence. Furthermore, when you consistently make decisions based on virtue rather than expedience, you build a reputation for integrity that creates long-term opportunities and relationships based on trust rather than temporary advantage. People learn that they can count on you to do what's right even when it's difficult, which often leads to more meaningful and sustainable success than choices based purely on short-term gain. Epictetus observed, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The wealth that comes from principled decision-making includes the inner peace of knowing that your choices reflect your deepest values, the respect of people who matter most to you, and the confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever consequences arise from living authentically. The client situation, when approached through this framework, transforms from a crisis threatening your security into an opportunity to demonstrate and strengthen your character. Whether the immediate outcome appears positive or negative, you know that you've chosen based on principles that will serve you throughout your life and career. This mastery of decision-making under pressure now prepares you to approach one of life's most profound challenges, developing a healthy relationship with time and mortality that transforms every day into an opportunity for meaningful living and authentic presence. Step 13. Live each day like it actually matters. You're rushing through the corridors of a busy hospital in New York City, coffee in hand, checking your phone while mentally rehearsing your presentation for this afternoon's meeting. As you pass the oncology ward, you catch a glimpse through an open door of an elderly patient sitting quietly by the window, gazing out at the morning sunlight with an expression of profound peace and attention. Something about the quality of her presence stops you in your tracks. While you've been frantically multitasking and planning for future events, she appears completely absorbed in the simple act of watching light filter through leaves. In that moment, you realize how rarely you experience this kind of present moment awareness, and you wonder what it would be like to approach each day with the same intentionality and appreciation that someone facing their mortality might bring to ordinary moments. This encounter illustrates one of the most transformative practices in Stoic philosophy, developing what Marcus Aurelius called memento mori, which means remembering death not as a morbid obsession but as a daily reminder that your time is limited and therefore precious beyond measure. This awareness doesn't create anxiety or depression when properly understood, but rather serves as a powerful catalyst for living with greater purpose, presence, and appreciation for the opportunities that each day provides. The foundation of living each day like it matters begins with accepting the reality that your time on earth is finite, uncertain, and largely unpredictable. Most people unconsciously operate under the illusion that they have unlimited time to pursue their goals, repair their relationships, and become the person they want to be. This false sense of infinite duration leads to procrastination, taking relationships for granted, and postponing meaningful activities in favor of urgent but ultimately trivial concerns. Marcus Aurelius, despite his position as the most powerful man in the ancient world, regularly reminded himself of mortality's reality. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." This perspective reveals that the real tragedy isn't the eventual ending of life, but the possibility of reaching that ending without having truly engaged with the opportunities and experiences that were available along the way. To transform this awareness into daily practice, you must first develop what the Stoics called temporal consciousness, a vivid recognition that this particular day will never come again and therefore deserves your full attention and best effort. In the hospital scenario, you might pause after witnessing the patient's mindful attention and ask yourself, how would I approach this day differently if I knew it contained limited and irreplaceable opportunities for connection, contribution, and growth? This question doesn't require dramatic life changes or abandoning responsibilities, but rather bringing greater intentionality to activities you're already engaged in. Instead of rushing through your presentation preparation while thinking about evening plans, you might focus completely on creating something valuable that serves your colleagues and advances meaningful goals. Instead of checking your phone while having coffee, you might fully experience the taste, warmth, and few minutes of quiet before the day's demands begin. The second aspect of living with temporal awareness involves prioritizing relationships and connections that truly matter over social obligations or networking opportunities that serve primarily superficial purposes. Seneca, who understood how quickly circumstances could change, wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." This wisdom suggests that every interaction contains the possibility of being the last meaningful exchange you have with that person, which naturally elevates the quality of attention you bring to conversations and shared experiences. In practical terms, this might mean calling a family member you've been meaning to connect with rather than scrolling social media, or having a genuine conversation with your colleague about their challenges, rather than limiting interactions to professional small talk. The awareness of mortality transforms routine social interactions into opportunities for authentic connection that becomes increasingly valuable as time passes. The third element involves approaching your daily activities with what Epictetus called prosoke, which means continuous attention to living according to virtue and wisdom. When you remember that your character development cannot be postponed indefinitely, every situation becomes an opportunity to practice courage, kindness, honesty, or patience rather than simply getting through tasks efficiently. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." This embodiment becomes more urgent and focused when you recognize that your time to demonstrate wisdom and virtue is limited. In the hospital corridor, instead of being irritated by delays or focused solely on your agenda, you might practice patience with slow elevators, gratitude for your health, and compassion for people facing medical challenges. The fourth practice centers on cultivating what the Stoics called gratitude for the present moment, which involves recognizing the extraordinary nature of ordinary experiences when viewed through the lens of temporal awareness. The fact that you can see sunlight, taste coffee, hear music, or share laughter with friends represents remarkable privileges that won't be available indefinitely. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced this form of appreciation, writing, "Dwell on the beauty of life, watch the stars, and see yourself running with them." This cosmic perspective helps you recognize that your current experiences, however routine they might seem, represent a temporary alignment of circumstances that creates unique opportunities for awareness and enjoyment that won't exist in exactly the same form again. The fifth element involves using mortality awareness to clarify your authentic priorities, rather than living according to others' expectations or societal pressures that may not align with your deepest values. When you truly understand that your time is limited, you become more selective about how you invest your energy and attention, naturally gravitating toward activities and relationships that feel meaningful rather than merely impressive or convenient. This clarity often involves saying no to commitments that don't serve your genuine growth or contribution, while saying yes to opportunities that might seem risky or unconventional but align with your authentic interests and values. The patient in the hospital window might not be concerned with advancing her career or maintaining her social media presence, but rather with appreciating beauty and finding peace, which represents a form of success that remains valuable regardless of external circumstances. The transformation that results from consistently living with mortality awareness extends far beyond individual satisfaction to affect everyone around you. When you approach relationships with the recognition that time together is precious and limited, you naturally become more present, patient, and appreciative. Your example of living with intention and gratitude often inspires others to examine their own relationship with time and priorities. Furthermore, this practice creates what the Stoics called ataraxia, a deep inner tranquility that comes from knowing you're using your time well according to your authentic values rather than drifting through days without clear purpose or direction. This peace isn't dependent on achieving specific goals or receiving external validation, but rather emerges from the satisfaction of living fully in each present moment while maintaining awareness of time's precious nature. Seneca observed, "It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass?" This wisdom reminds you that while you cannot predict how much time you have, you can ensure that whatever time remains is lived with awareness, purpose, and appreciation for the remarkable opportunity that conscious existence represents. The practice of living each day like it matters now prepares you to build relationships that not only provide personal satisfaction but actively contribute to your character development and support your commitment to living according to virtue and wisdom. Step 14. Build relationships that strengthen your character. You're sitting across from your closest friend at a coffee shop in Seattle, listening as they share their excitement about a get-rich-quick scheme that involves misleading potential investors about guaranteed returns. As they outline their plan, you feel the tension between wanting to support their enthusiasm and recognizing that their approach involves deception that could harm innocent people. Your friend clearly expects your encouragement and possibly your participation, and you realize that your response in this moment will either strengthen your character through honest communication or weaken it through complicit silence. This scenario perfectly illustrates how relationships serve as crucibles for character development, constantly presenting opportunities to practice virtue or compromise your principles depending on how you choose to engage. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood that relationships represent one of the most powerful forces for personal transformation, capable of either elevating you toward wisdom and virtue or pulling you toward weakness and vice. Unlike modern approaches that often focus on what relationships can do for your happiness or success, the Stoic perspective emphasizes what relationships can do for your character development and how you can use every interaction as an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. To build relationships that strengthen rather than diminish your character, you must first understand the difference between relationships based on mutual virtue and those based on convenience, entertainment, or mutual enablement of poor choices. Marcus Aurelius, despite his position requiring him to work with people of varying character and motivations, consistently sought to surround himself with individuals who challenged him to become better rather than those who simply agreed with his opinions or flattered his ego. He wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This principle applies powerfully to relationships because it suggests that you should choose companions who inspire you to embody your highest values, rather than those who encourage you to lower your standards or compromise your integrity. In the coffee shop scenario, a friendship that truly serves your character development would be one where you can express honest concerns about ethical issues without fear of rejection or retaliation. The foundation of character-strengthening relationships begins with practicing what Seneca called beneficial friendship, which involves seeking and offering relationships based on mutual growth, honest communication, and shared commitment to virtue rather than mere social comfort or personal advantage. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes building relationships that strengthen your character requires ending patterns of superficial interaction to create space for deeper, more authentic connections. This doesn't mean being judgmental toward people who make different choices, but rather being honest about which relationships encourage your best qualities and which ones tempt you toward behavior that contradicts your values. You might maintain cordial professional relationships with colleagues whose values differ from yours, while investing your deepest emotional energy in friendships that inspire mutual growth and virtue. The second principle involves practicing radical honesty within your relationships, which means communicating your authentic thoughts and feelings even when doing so creates temporary discomfort or conflict. Most people avoid difficult conversations to maintain surface-level harmony, but this approach actually weakens both your character and your relationships by preventing the kind of genuine connection that comes from working through challenges together. In the investment scheme situation, practicing radical honesty would involve expressing your concerns about the ethical implications of the plan while maintaining respect and care for your friend as a person. This might sound like, "I care about you and want you to succeed, and I'm concerned that this approach could harm both you and the people you're asking to invest. Can we talk about other ways to achieve your financial goals that align with both of our values?" This kind of honest communication requires courage because it risks disagreement or even the end of the relationship, but it also creates the possibility for genuine intimacy and mutual respect that superficial agreeability can never provide. Epictetus taught his students that true friendship could only exist between people willing to challenge each other toward virtue, because relationships based on mutual enablement ultimately serve neither person's genuine well-being. The third principle centers on using relationships as opportunities to practice the four cardinal virtues in real-world situations where your character is actually tested. Wisdom develops through listening carefully to others' perspectives and sharing your own insights thoughtfully. Courage emerges through standing up for your values while remaining open to feedback and growth. Justice manifests through treating all people fairly, regardless of their status or what they can do for you. Self-discipline appears through managing your emotional reactions and maintaining your principles even when relationships become challenging. Every difficult conversation, every moment of temptation to gossip or complain, every opportunity to offer help or encouragement becomes a chance to strengthen these virtues through practice. The investment scheme conversation offers opportunities to practice wisdom by thinking through the long-term consequences of different choices, courage by speaking honestly despite potential social cost, justice by considering the impact on unknown investors, and self-discipline by managing your own emotions while remaining focused on what's genuinely helpful. The fourth principle involves actively seeking relationships with people who embody qualities you want to develop while also serving as that kind of inspirational example for others. Marcus Aurelius consistently sought mentors and advisors who challenged him intellectually and morally, understanding that surrounding himself with virtue would naturally elevate his own character through daily exposure to excellent examples. This doesn't mean only associating with perfect people, which would be both impossible and arrogant, but rather prioritizing relationships with individuals who are genuinely committed to growth, learning, and contributing positively to the world around them. These relationships might include mentors who inspire you through their wisdom and experience, peers who challenge you through their different perspectives and honest feedback, and people you can mentor who inspire you through their eagerness to learn and grow. The fifth principle focuses on practicing what the Stoics called sympatheia, which means recognizing your fundamental interconnection with all other human beings and allowing this awareness to guide how you engage in relationships. This perspective prevents you from using relationships primarily for personal gain while encouraging genuine care for others' well-being and character development. In practical terms, sympatheia transforms your friend's excitement about the questionable investment scheme from an annoyance or threat into an opportunity to serve their highest good through honest communication and support for better alternatives. You recognize that their potential success through ethical means serves not only their individual well-being but also contributes to the kind of world you want to live in. The transformation that results from consistently building character-strengthening relationships extends far beyond personal satisfaction to create a network of mutual support for living according to virtue and wisdom. You develop the confidence that comes from knowing people in your life will encourage your best qualities rather than enabling your worst impulses. Your example of choosing relationships based on virtue rather than convenience often inspires others to examine their own relationship patterns. Epictetus observed, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The wealth that comes from character-strengthening relationships includes the trust, respect, and genuine intimacy that emerge when people know they can count on each other to encourage growth, speak honestly, and remain committed to shared values even when doing so requires courage or sacrifice. This foundation of virtue-based relationships now prepares you to achieve the ultimate goal of Stoic practice: the complete inner freedom and tranquility that comes from living in harmony with your highest nature while contributing meaningfully to the well-being of the world around you. Step 15. Achieve complete inner freedom and peace. You're standing on the balcony of your apartment in Austin, Texas, watching the sun set over the city as you reflect on how dramatically your life has changed since beginning this transformation journey. 6 months ago, you were constantly anxious about things beyond your control, reactive to other people's moods and opinions, and trapped in cycles of anger, fear, and dissatisfaction that seemed impossible to escape. Tonight, as you observe the same external world that once caused you so much stress, you feel a profound sense of inner stability that remains unshaken by the day's challenges, disappointments, or uncertainties. This transformation represents what the ancient Stoic philosophers called ataraxia, complete inner freedom and tranquility that emerges when you have fully integrated virtue, wisdom, and acceptance into every aspect of your daily life. This final step in your Stoic transformation isn't about reaching a destination where challenges disappear or life becomes permanently easy. Rather, it involves achieving a fundamental shift in your relationship with all experiences, both pleasant and difficult, so that your inner peace no longer depends on external circumstances aligning with your preferences. Marcus Aurelius, even while managing an empire and facing personal tragedies, maintained this kind of unshakable equanimity by understanding that true freedom comes from within rather than from controlling the world around you. The foundation of complete inner freedom rests on what Epictetus called the discipline of desire, which involves training yourself to want what happens rather than demanding that reality conform to your wishes. This doesn't mean becoming passive or abandoning your goals, but rather developing the wisdom to distinguish between preferences you can work toward and outcomes you must accept regardless of your efforts. Epictetus taught, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish. They will happen as they happen, and you will be happy." To understand how this principle creates inner freedom, consider how much of your suffering comes from resisting circumstances that have already occurred or demanding that future events unfold according to your specific timeline and preferences. When you practice the discipline of desire, you maintain your commitment to excellent effort while releasing attachment to particular results, which eliminates the constant tension between what is and what you think should be. In practical terms, this might mean pursuing career advancement with complete dedication while accepting that promotions depend on factors beyond your control, including company needs, economic conditions, and other people's decisions. You find satisfaction in giving your best effort and developing your skills rather than deriving your sense of worth from whether specific opportunities materialize according to your preferred schedule. The second foundation involves achieving what Marcus Aurelius called the view from above, which means maintaining perspective on your current challenges by understanding your place in the larger cosmic order. This cosmic perspective prevents you from becoming overwhelmed by temporary difficulties while helping you recognize the relative insignificance of many concerns that feel tremendously important in the moment. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced this perspective, writing, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." When you truly grasp that your current problems represent tiny fluctuations in an infinite and eternal cosmos, you naturally develop the kind of equanimity that allows you to address challenges calmly without being consumed by anxiety or desperation about outcomes. This perspective also reminds you that the qualities you've developed through facing difficulties, courage, wisdom, patience, and resilience, become permanent parts of your character that no external circumstance can diminish. The promotion you didn't receive or the relationship that ended may cause temporary disappointment, but the strength you developed while navigating these challenges represents lasting wealth that enriches all future experiences. The third foundation centers on what Seneca called the eternal perspective, which involves making decisions and responses based on how they will appear when viewed from the end of your life rather than their immediate emotional impact. This temporal framework naturally guides you toward choices that build character and contribute meaningfully to others rather than those that provide temporary pleasure or relief, but ultimately undermine your integrity and growth. Seneca understood this principle when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Each moment presents an opportunity to end old patterns of reactive behavior and begin new patterns based on virtue and wisdom." When you consistently choose character development over immediate gratification, you build what the Stoics called an inner citadel, a sanctuary of peace and strength that remains accessible regardless of external chaos. The fourth foundation involves practicing what the Stoics called negative visualization, which means regularly imagining the loss of people, possessions, and circumstances you currently enjoy in order to cultivate gratitude for their presence while preparing emotionally for their inevitable absence. This practice might seem morbid initially, but it actually enhances your appreciation for current blessings while eliminating the anxiety that comes from clinging desperately to temporary pleasures. When you practice negative visualization consistently, you develop the ability to enjoy good fortune without becoming attached to it and face adversity without being devastated by it. You recognize that all external circumstances are temporary gifts to be appreciated rather than permanent possessions that define your worth or security. This recognition creates tremendous freedom because your happiness no longer depends on maintaining specific conditions that remain largely beyond your control. The fifth foundation focuses on what Epictetus called living according to nature, which means aligning your daily choices with your essential identity as a rational being capable of virtue, wisdom, and service to the common good. This alignment creates inner harmony because your actions consistently reflect your deepest values rather than conflicting impulses driven by emotion, social pressure, or immediate desires. Living according to nature involves viewing every situation as an opportunity to practice virtue rather than simply pursuing personal advantage or avoiding discomfort. Your morning commute becomes a chance to practice patience. Your difficult colleague becomes an opportunity to develop understanding, and your financial challenges become training for self-discipline and resourcefulness. This perspective transforms ordinary life into a continuous practice of character development. The transformation that results from integrating these five foundations creates what ancient philosophers recognized as the highest form of human flourishing. You develop what Marcus Aurelius called an invincible mind, not because nothing can harm you, but because you've learned to find opportunity for growth and meaning in every circumstance. Your sense of well-being comes from internal sources that remain stable regardless of external changes. This inner freedom expresses itself through several unmistakable qualities that become apparent to both yourself and others around you. You maintain emotional equilibrium during both success and failure, viewing both as temporary conditions that provide opportunities for practicing virtue. You respond to criticism and praise with equal composure, understanding that your worth comes from character rather than others' opinions. You face uncertainty with curiosity rather than anxiety, recognizing that unknown outcomes often provide unexpected opportunities for growth and service. Perhaps most importantly, you develop genuine compassion for others who are still struggling with the reactive patterns you've learned to transcend. Rather than feeling superior or judgmental, you remember your own journey and offer support and understanding to people who are working to develop similar inner strength. This compassion becomes a natural expression of the wisdom and peace you've cultivated. The ultimate realization that marks complete inner freedom involves understanding that you already possess everything necessary for a meaningful and satisfying life. External achievements, possessions, and circumstances can enhance your experience, but they cannot fundamentally alter your capacity for virtue, wisdom, and contribution to the world around you. Epictetus, who achieved this realization despite experiencing slavery and physical disability, taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The wealth of inner freedom includes peace that doesn't depend on specific outcomes, confidence that comes from character rather than achievement, and joy that emerges from living according to your highest nature regardless of external circumstances. This complete transformation represents not the end of your growth, but rather the beginning of a new phase where you can serve as an example and guide for others seeking similar freedom. Your journey through these 15 steps has prepared you to face whatever challenges and opportunities life presents with the unshakable foundation of virtue, wisdom, and inner peace that defines true Stoic living. Your complete transformation plan and sustaining your new Stoic life. Your journey through these 15 transformative steps represents far more than intellectual understanding of ancient philosophy. You now possess a complete system for living with unshakable inner strength, authentic purpose, and genuine peace regardless of what challenges or opportunities life presents. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus has become integrated into practical tools that you can apply immediately to transform ordinary moments into opportunities for character development and meaningful contribution. The true power of what you've learned emerges through consistent daily practice rather than perfect implementation. Each morning when you wake up, you have the opportunity to apply the foundational principle of focusing only on what you can control. Throughout your day, every interaction becomes a chance to practice the emotional mastery techniques that allow you to respond with wisdom rather than react with impulse. Every challenge becomes raw material for the obstacle-less path philosophy that transforms difficulties into stepping stones toward greater strength and clarity. Remember that developing unshakable confidence, authentic self-love, and character-based power happens gradually through countless small choices rather than dramatic overnight changes. The colleague who annoys you becomes your teacher in patience. The unexpected delay becomes your opportunity to practice acceptance. The difficult decision becomes your chance to align actions with values regardless of external pressure or uncertain outcomes. Most importantly, understand that living according to Stoic principles creates a positive ripple effect that extends far beyond your individual experience. When you maintain inner peace during chaos, others around you feel safer and more centered. When you respond to criticism with equanimity and grace, you model emotional maturity that inspires others to examine their own reactive patterns. When you make decisions based on virtue rather than expedience, you contribute to creating the kind of world where integrity and wisdom are valued above temporary advantage. The relationships you build using these principles become sources of mutual growth and authentic connection rather than superficial networking or emotional dependency. Your approach to work transforms from desperate striving for external validation into meaningful contribution that serves both your character development and the common good. Your response to setbacks evolves from victimhood and complaint into curiosity about what lessons and opportunities each challenge provides. As you continue practicing these principles, you'll discover that the inner freedom and tranquility you've developed become more precious than any external achievement or possession. The confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever circumstances arise provides a form of security that no amount of wealth or status could offer. The peace that emerges from accepting what you cannot control while taking complete responsibility for what you can influence creates a foundation for joy that remains stable regardless of external fluctuations. This transformation you've begun will continue deepening throughout your entire life as you apply these timeless principles to new situations, relationships, and challenges. Each decade will bring opportunities to demonstrate and strengthen the virtues you've cultivated, while every experience will contribute to the wisdom and compassion that mark true Stoic living. If this 15-step journey has provided value in your quest for authentic transformation and inner strength, please show your support by subscribing to the Stoic Vivu channel, where we're committed to making ancient wisdom practical for modern life. Your subscription helps us continue creating content that transforms philosophical concepts into actionable guidance for real-world challenges. Please like this video if these principles have inspired you to approach your daily life with greater wisdom and intentionality. Your engagement helps other people discover these life-changing teachings and begin their own journey toward unshakable inner peace and authentic purpose. Share this content with friends, family members, or colleagues who might benefit from learning how to master their emotions, build genuine confidence, and create meaning that transcends external circumstances. The gift of Stoic wisdom becomes more valuable when shared with others who are seeking authentic transformation and lasting fulfillment. Your journey toward complete inner freedom has just begun, and every day offers new opportunities to embody the timeless wisdom that has guided humanity's greatest minds for over 2,000 years.